Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J More Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live here on Facebook, drop your comments and questions for my guest or myself into the comment box, and I will check from time to time. Today's guest is Chandra Ram, whose love of the written word as well as food has combined a degree in journalism from Loyola College, a culinary arts degree from the Culinary Institute of America, and a certificate level of the Court of Master Sommelier, has put her career on a path that would twist and turn throughout the years. Chandra is highly respected in the culinary world as a journalist, editor at Plate Magazine, and Food and Wine, cookbook author, speaker, recipe developer, food trend reporting. She walks the walk and talks the talk, nominated multiple times for James Beard Award and IACP Food Writer Award. Her credibility is unmatched. So you don't want to miss her free Substack column that she started back in October called Another Bite with Chandra Ram. Let's welcome Chandra.
Thank you so much
Hi,
for having me,
Chandra.
Dara. Hi, thank you so
It's
much for having me.
it's a pleasure, and I'm sitting here playing with a lot of the different things here. I always ask at the beginning, what's on your plate to do today other than doing the show?
Other than doing the show, it's probably a good mix of everything I have going on since I'm working independently now. I just published this week's edition of my newsletter on Substack. And you mentioned you just received that. So I got that sorted out right before I came on. I'm photographing a dish for next week's newsletter. And so I need to do that today because I do everything in my apartment and I live in Chicago and it's sunny in Chicago today. So I need to take advantage of it while I can. And then I have a bunch of editing to get done this after recipe editing to get done this afternoon. So it's a lot of different bits and pieces, but it all comes together well.
Well, what can I say? You just in going through all this, we met once, and it was, I think, at l'Académie de Cuisine in DC. And
Like in another lifetime before there was a pandemic, before any of that. Yes.
yeah, at and you were at Plate Magazine for like 15 years. And
Hmm.
we'll get to that. And it was some sort of cooking competition. I don't know how I got invited because I'm not a chef. And I still have the chef's jacket that Plate gave us. I was so
Oh,
proud of
good.
that. Yeah, I wish I could still button it, but that's another story.
It was a long pandemic. It did lots of things to all of us.
I know, I know. Um, I know you're a Southern girl, raised in Kentucky.
Hmm.
Your mother was Irish, your father was Indian. I always ask about the family table. Growing up, tell me about your family table and what it was like.
My family table was, in retrospect, it's, absolutely what set me on this career path. We ate dinner together as a family every night. We tended to eat later than most of our neighbors. We ate usually around 7 p.m. or after. And it was a full bells and whistles meal. My mother is a fantastic cook and she was very ambitious. And I actually remember this moment when I was a kid when a friend of mine was telling me that her mother was doing Campbell's tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner. And I was like, you mean she just opens a can and then you get to have dinner? Like, because my mother made fairly elaborate meals for us. And she cooked out of those Time Life cookbooks, the cuisines of the world.
Yeah.
She, cooked out of food magazines. We always had Bon Appetit and Food and Wine and so many other magazines, in lifestyle magazines like Ladies Home Journal, things like that, Good Housekeeping. Um, she cooked Indian food about once a week. And I was actually just home visiting her in Kentucky, and I had grabbed breakfast with a good friend of mine who is also half Indian. Her mother is American. And we were laughing about the fact that, like, we didn't necessarily love Indian food when we were growing up. And for me, it was my Irish mother who had the spiciest palate of anyone I knew. And so she made this food so spicy that I didn't really like it when I was a kid. But she had this dish that she made. And like, if I text my brothers right now and I say, I've done this before, like, what's the best thing mom ever made? It's potato onion fry. And it's a very simple recipe of fried potatoes in a spice masala. So she would use cumin, she'd use coriander, Kashmiri chilies, which are, it's a dried, mild chili used in a lot of Indian cooking, mustard seeds. And she would cook these potatoes and onions, and you could smell it everywhere in the house. And that to me is just so indicative of her cooking uh, and what we did. That was just like one of my favorite things. But she also, she would bake raisin scones. I remember once she bought a wok, and she and my father were planning on having a dinner party later that week. And my mother went ahead, like 3 days after, buying a wok, she cooked all of these stir fries and, made all this Japanese food for this dinner party. She was very ambitious and fearless in that way.
Where were you in Kentucky? Because I would have to think where you were in Kentucky, getting some of these ingredients would have been hard to come by.
Oh, sure. So I grew up in Lexington, which is kind of a large town, small city. I think it's roughly about 300,000 people. And what one of the things that makes Lexington really interesting is that it's a college town. The University of Kentucky is based there. And so that's why I think the town supports like the number of different cuisines and restaurants with those cuisines, lots of vegetarian restaurants, in addition to all of the kind of like more meat heavier
Yeah.
Southern food. Although, I mean, I learned growing up that so much Southern food is based on the garden, and it doesn't necessarily have to be heavy. But Lexington is also home to a lot of the horse farms that Kentucky is also famous for. And so there's a certain group of people who fly into Lexington to buy their horses. Like Queen Elizabeth used to get her horses from Lexington.
Really?
Yeah, from some of the farms out there. And so when I was growing up, there was one Indian grocery store that was a tiny, tiny space that hardly had anything. And so when my family would go to India, we did these big trips every other year. We would bring home spices and bits of cooking equipment and things like that. We would pack suitcases full of gifts from America. And I don't remember this, but my mother was telling me once that she actually brought like a set of Corning dishware to India. So I can only imagine how that uh, how that was packed in our suitcases. But otherwise, it was, a lot of back and forth. So there's a few Indian markets now. And then, of course, there's, grocery stores like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's that have, Indian spices and ingredients and things like that. But yeah, my mother actually had to learn how to make yogurt when she and my father moved to the U.S. They moved. They met in London and lived there for a few years, and then moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and that's where my oldest brother was born in London. The rest of us were born in Cleveland, and then we moved to Kentucky when I was very young. But she had to. At that time, you couldn't buy plain yogurt in a grocery store, so she bought this yogurt maker from some like hippie company out of Berkeley and learned how to make her own yogurt.
You know, it's amazing to me what the family table brings out. For me, it was rule of thumb that we all sat down at dinner. There was, of course, no cell phones at that time, no TV, no newspapers, and we spoke about what went on during our day. And that communal feel of love, I think, has a big reason why I'm so passionate about food. To me, that family table, that unity just meant a lot to me, and that sharing. So it's important for me to talk about that.
Mm.
Your career, many paths, went this way, went that way. Um, Now, you were a hostess, which sort of kicked off the restaurant vibe for you. Was that while you were going to college, or was that beforehand?
That actually I started working in restaurants when I was in high school. And I loved food. I didn't know I wanted to work in food. I was, 16, had just gotten my driver's license and was able to, go get a job. And so I got a job at Chi Chi's, which was a big deal restaurant at the time. And I was a hostess, and it was so much fun. It was a lot of work, and it was a great time. We were always busy. It wasn't one of those jobs where we were kind of standing around with nothing to do. There's always side work to be done on, evenings and weekends. We would always have a packed waiting room, a packed sort of lobby area. There's, you know, in restaurants at any given minute, 100 things are happening. And so if you're into it, if you're good at it, you jump in and you help clear that table, or you help deliver some of the food, or you go through and kind of check and see how many tables are on coffee and dessert. How are we doing with our estimated wait times? And that was definitely when I was bit by that bug of
Oh,
loving
yeah.
restaurants.
Well, the restaurant scene, restaurant on any given night, like a Chili's, and if that was a big deal in Lexington, you were always busy. You get pumped. You're going, do this, do that. You want to get things done. And connecting with people, which is an important part of it. Um,
Mm.
you've done a lot of different things. I found that you bartended in a French restaurant in London to running a catering. Well, I know you were running a catering business, but it was in Maine.
I did some catering work in Maine, and I also that's when I started cooking in restaurants. And so I started as the another glamorous job. I was the omelet girl on the hotel buffet line in Portland, Maine, and then graduated into like moved up into cooking the regular breakfast, into cooking lunch, into getting to do dinners, doing events, things like that. So it's yeah, that was a great experience. It was another one of those things of like, here's your job and here's your opportunity to grow and do more and things like that.
Right.
So
Was that after you graduated CIA or
that
before?
was before. That was before. CIA required a minimum of 6 months experience cooking in a restaurant. And so prior to that, I had hosted and waited tables and bartended, and I had done some catering work on the side, doing cooking events out of my apartment kitchen kind of thing,
Yeah.
which I think, so many of us do. And then I knew I wanted to go to culinary school, and that's where I wanted to go. And I needed restaurant experience, which I think is so important to like, you have to experience the entirety of what it means to cook in a restaurant if you're going to make the investment to go to culinary school and do that. And yeah, I didn't think I went to culinary school and didn't think I necessarily wanted to be a restaurant cook because I had a journalism background. I loved writing. I wasn't really sure what my path would be to get into food writing, but I I knew I wanted to do it. And it's one of the great things about the food world is you can go in 100 different directions, and you can take that experience and create recipes or be a food stylist or,
All right.
work in restaurants or in hotels, or we were talking earlier about senior living centers. And I have a few friends from culinary school who work in those. And one of them works in one of those places where it's like a 3-course meal every night. And these people are paying a lot and they're getting this incredible experience. So that's one thing I love about food is there's, there's a huge spectrum of opportunities from it.
Right. Well, you're saying opportunities. I feel like your career at certain points, you were being in the right place at the right time.
Oh, for sure. Right place, right time. And, it's luck and it's a lot of hard work. And so it's, kind of saying like, all right, here's this opportunity. I'm going to do, you know, sort of like be like that, what is it people say? Like be like a duck where you're on the surface of the water and you're, everything looks
Paddling,
calm, but frantically under the water, you're paddling like crazy.
right? And in the things that I've seen, places at the right time, but you were also you still are good at self-promotion. So I think you knew how to go out and sell yourself as well.
That's so funny because I feel very awkward about self-promotion. I learned that a friend told me before my Indian cookbook, which is the only one I've done on my own. Otherwise, I've co-authored with chefs. A friend was like, you have to not think of it as promoting yourself, but promoting this book that you created in partnership with a photographer, in partnership with a publishing house and an editor and an art director and a designer and all of that. So I do it, and then sometimes I'm just utterly, you know, get all kinds of anxiety and my brain starts spinning and I have to go for a walk.
It's funny, you tend to shed light on other people. When I say that, you do many panels and you host and you interview. So I
Mhm.
think you're very comfortable with people and talking and drawing things out from them. Um, Plate Magazine, that's where we met.
Mhm.
That whatever, but it gave you opportunities to travel and there's so much. Explain for people who don't know about Plate Magazine. Plate Magazine was the end all for any chef. They wanted to be in Plate. It was a magazine for chefs, about chefs. Am I missing something in the description? Should I be saying more about Plate?
I appreciate all your kind words about Plate. I was there until I left in 2021, and I was there for 15 years, and it's a huge part of my, my work history and education. And yeah, it was a food magazine for chefs. And we focused on, really the thing that pulled everyone into the industry. We didn't necessarily want to, there were other magazines that covered the business side of things, the operation side of things, and this was what is happening in food. What are the most interesting plates and bowls of food that are out there? Who's doing it? And it struck me what you said about your own family table when you were growing up. It's that exchange of ideas, and that's something that so many of us loved and cherished, and that got us into food was the fact that it was the center of, it's how you share your day over a plate of food.
Right.
And it was, how you share ideas and how chefs could really be part of a conversation with each other and say, this is the food I'm doing. This is an old technique that I'm especially interested in. This is what I'm doing. And we loved it. I'm so sad. The publishing company that owned Plate, was sold to a new company just under a year ago, and then the new company shut down Plate, and just makes me sad that it's gone now.
Well, you made it what it was along with your coworkers, but it was
Oh,
your vision. They brought you in early before it just when it was starting, before it even gone to press. You were approached to be part of it, and I think maybe that was being at the right place at the right time and self-promotion at the same time.
that was right place, right time for sure. Nancy Ross Ryan was the founding editor of Plate, and she called me when she was working on the first issue, and she said, I'm working on this piece, and this at the time Plate was had a single theme for each issue, and the theme for that issue was pork, and it was she needed to talk to somebody about pork and how it was prepared in Vietnamese cooking, and she needed to learn more about fish sauce. And someone had told her that I was the person she should talk to. And I don't know why they told her that. I knew a bit about fish sauce from cooking in different restaurants. Um, but she called me and said, "Hey, can I interview you about fish sauce?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love it." And then I went and did a ton of research about fish sauce. And the day later, we had our interview, and I was able to give her the information that she needed and talk about how I used it while working in various restaurants. And then a week or so later, she messaged me and said, you talked about how you cooked with it. I'd love for you to, would you contribute a recipe to the magazine? And so that's how I had worked as a freelancer before, but that's how I got into it. So,
Yeah.
um,
It, yeah, it was, you were always excited, if you ended up in Plate, um, or, I see the chefs, it was an important thing for them to be part of that. Moving along, because we could talk about Plate and your travels and things you did there, Food and Wine. So that was fairly recent, and I think
mhm.
more or less you were refreshing an established magazine to make it more conducive to the marketplace today. Wasn't it doing more online?
With doing more online, I joined Food and Wine in late 2021, and it was right when the parent company was being sold. And it was sold to a company that Dash that only published digital media, did not do any print. And so they were really proactive about updating the website and really seeing what more we could do with that. And I joined, focused on the digital side initially, and then went on to become essentially the food director, overseeing all the food content and recipes for print and digital. But it was, yeah, exactly what you said. The editorial director and editor in chief and I worked on, how to make sure that people saw Food and Wine as a resource for a weeknight dinner as well as a special occasion recipe, and how we could update our recipes. It's an amazing thing working for a publication that's been around for 40 plus years. But so that also means sometimes you've got to update the photography. You've got to, we had all of these recipes from iconic chefs, like Julia Child used to write for Food and Wine, and Edna Lewis contributed all of these recipes, but we didn't have photos of those. So I, work with the photographers to get new photos taken, and then we'd see, okay, how can we promote these and that, and also, yeah, working with the test kitchens, the cooks in the test kitchens, and chefs I knew to create new recipes that readers could make, and really kind of position the brand for where things are happening in media now.
Well, you're still working with them on the side because I saw that you're helping write recipes that were developed by other people. Wasn't it Timpano? Wasn't that one of the recent ones?
I had a recipe developed. I had the test kitchen develop a recipe for timpano a couple of years ago. So it's probably popped up recently in what we call a gallery, which is like one of those lists of like, here's, 20 dishes to make for Easter, that sort of thing. So, but I do still, so I freelance. I'm working on, I know I've got a recipe coming out in a couple of months. I'm working on some articles as well. And then I freelance for other publications too.
Yeah. Food 52, anything that's food, you have your hands in. That's for
I
sure.
try to, and it's a shame. Food media has shrunk quite a bit in the last, 5, 10 years. But it's something. Each publication has a bit of a different mission and a different tone, and it's fun to be freelancing in that regard because if I have an idea that's not necessarily right for Food 52 or Food and Wine, like, oh, this might be something that's a great, fit for Sabor, for example. But on the other hand, it's very hard to be a freelancer these days because media has just gotten tougher and tougher, as you know.
I want to get into your Substack because it's wonderful. And this
Thank
is, I
you.
mean, it's a joy to read. And I know you're working on a cookbook with Stephanie Izard or Izard. I don't know
Izard,
how.
yeah.
Izard. And for people who, she was Top Chef maybe fourth or fifth season, the first female chef to get Top Chef,
Mhm.
and very renowned in the Chicago area and nationally. So you're working on a cookbook with her, but the Substack is sort of replaced the blog
Mhm.
if we're looking at the technology, because people can create it and then make it a subscription program, but yours is free at this time.
Yes.
And I want to tell people that it's chandraram.substack.com. There will be a link coming up in the comment section, but just sign up for it. It's a joy. And I went back to your first post, which was a simple recipe. It was sort of like you were testing the waters. Let me dip my toes in here and see
Mhm.
how this works. And then you were full steam ahead. Um, I can understand because you've worked with a lot of what I call e-zines or online magazines, that
Mhm.
how you have this set up, it's more than just the recipe. Part of it is you have little subcategories. You have the story and the recipe. You have leftovers remix. One of your things is helping people sort of find those odds and ends in the refrigerator and make something out of that. Little treats. How did this all evolve? I mean, did you know where you were heading, or has it been an evolution with it?
Um, I I spent a long time figuring out what I would want, uh, what I wanted to do, and then thought about the newsletters that I read and what made them compelling. And what were the ones I read, what were the ones I didn't read, and what wasn't necessarily interested in. I initially wanted to just include any kind of recipe in the newsletter each week. And but I've always just been so interested in using up leftovers. My parents raised us to never waste food, and I love the idea of taking something that's left over and like never just reheating it and expecting it to be the same, but like turning it into something that's a little bit more more interesting, or just like a different version of what it is. And so that felt like something that had legs to it. I think, and after so many years of working in magazines, I've learned that, it's easy to have ideas for the first 3 weeks, of what you want to do in like a regular column or series. But as you know, if you're doing something every week or, every couple of weeks, however often, you have to have an idea. You have to have an editorial calendar and you have to plan for that. And I love making editorial calendars. So I put together a spreadsheet of like, okay, what would the essay be? What would the recipe be? What would the art and photography be? And what does this look like for the next couple of months? So as I've done that, it's evolved. I look at Substack is a great platform. You don't have to be a member of Substack or sign up for your own account necessarily to get any of these newsletters. You can just click the link and sign up for it, and you'll get it delivered in your inbox. Mine comes once a week, but it's the platform is very good about giving you intel on what worked, what didn't, your open rate on the newsletter itself, how many people clicked on each thing. So it gives you a lot of information. And I wanted to, yeah, I just really have a ball with it. I write a short essay that is very much a personal essay. I'm actually taking a personal essay writing class right now because I think no matter how long you've been doing something, it's really helpful to work with someone else and get their perspective on things. And that's been so much fun. And then the recipes, and then I photograph each recipe myself. I cringe when I run into friends of mine who are food photographers because I'm like, oh, like this is nowhere near as good as what they would do. But I'm dipping my toe into making videos for some of the recipes. So, and then learning how to edit those. So it's a process and it's a lot, but I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. It's, I go back to the days of having my blog, which was like 2000, and how
Mm-hmm.
things have evolved and getting into social media. Yeah, I can do a reel. Is it top quality? No, it's fun. That's what I'm doing.
Right.
But, you know, that's part of it. And your storytelling. Um, One of your posts is collecting match boxes, match books,
Mm.
and the story behind that. And, I just remember years ago, people would have the big brandy snifter with all the matches in it, packs of
Mm-hmm.
matches from the different restaurants, and how you could look at it and remember saying, I was here, and you sort of had a thought about it, jogs that memory about that meal or the people you were with. That And then you have a plate addiction that I used to have. I've been cured. I went to Betty Ford Clinic. There wasn't a plate I wouldn't buy, serving platter, anything, especially if you food styled. But when you travel and buying your pieces, I just love your stories. And they're
Oh,
you.
thank you.
They're you.
Thank you. I
And
appreciate
that's,
that so much.
it should be your voice. I do some writing, but when I say writing, I'm storytelling. It's something, it could be, sounds of summer from when I was a kid or something. But I'm not a journalist. I don't write facts. I just tell my stories. So let me see. We got all these things. There's probably more. I'm not going to start on AI because that's another whole discussion.
It
And
is.
folks,
It is.
I think you said that cookbooks are not suffering, that people are still buying. And I had the girls on from Eat Your Books.
Mm-hmm. I love that site.
Great. And now they have, why can't I remember it? They
Oh, the
have
app,
a
Cookshelf.
cook shelf. Thank you. I couldn't remember
Oh,
the name
it's
of
so
it.
great.
They have the app and they're just a joy. And I think part of your Substack, what I love about it is part of what I loved about cookbooks is reading the header, the story behind that recipe, the memoir, mom made it, or whatever generated it. So I think that takes me back to your Substack, and it's just the personal things and the little notes. So I do advise people, uh, sign up. It's free and it's joyous. Um,
Thank you.
I could get into, well, let me do this. I worked for Van Spices for a period of time.
Mhm.
And the owner, may she rest in peace, Ann Wilder, was into Indian spices way back when, and that's when she started her business. But Indian food didn't take off like some of the other cuisines, Vietnamese, blah, blah, blah. And it's only recently that I'm seeing that it's getting a little bit more universal because back in, 2005, we had a curry salt and nobody would buy it because it said curry on it.
Oh gosh.
So I said, just change the name. Don't tell them it's curry salt, give it another name. And because once people used it, they loved it. And I didn't know, are you seeing an uptick in people getting more involved into Indian cuisine?
I am. I am. I feel like it's growing so much in the restaurant community. In Chicago, and certainly in New York and Los Angeles, and I think Seattle, I feel like always has a great Indian restaurant scene. But there's more and more restaurants like Sema and Dhamaka in New York, and Rue in Chicago. We've got Indian. We've got Nadu, which is a new restaurant. There are a lot more kind of upscale restaurants that are, completely, entirely separate category from those kind of curry houses and things like that. So and then I love seeing Indian ingredients and flavors in restaurants that don't identify as Indian. You talk about curry salt, and years ago, Indian is one of the few cuisines that we did more than one issue solely dedicated to at Plate. And the first time we did it, we featured a kind of just regional American restaurant in LA that had French fries seasoned with curry salt on them, and just and then like a
Hmm.
little kind of curried aioli as a dipping sauce. And it was such a great way, I think, to introduce people to some of those flavors, because I mean, like, I'll eat a French fry no matter what, right?
You haven't
It's like
met
one of
one
the
you
joys
didn't
of
eat.
being in a restaurant.
Yeah.
So is getting those like freshly fried French fries. So I'm seeing a lot more openness and interest. You were asking me about Indian, finding Indian groceries when I was a kid in Kentucky, and that's not as much of an issue now because, like I said, there's more grocery chains that are including
Right.
them. But then the internet really leveled things out a bit and made it so you could go to a spice market, online spice market, and buy the spices yourself. And then what I tell people is to try and buy spices in as small quantities as you can so that you're always going back and buying fresh ones. You don't want the ones that have been sitting around for years. And whenever possible, toast them before you cook with them, and it just really brings out their flavor. And I think, I, like a lot of people, I had to learn that not all Indian food was loaded with chilies. So, a lot of what my mother cooked was, but there's so many regional cuisines in India. It's really probably should be like 10 or 15 countries, but instead it's all kind of like glommed up into one. But
Right.
the cuisines are very distinct. And
Right.
so what I see in most Indian restaurants is not what I grew up eating at all.
Yeah. And like anything else, the home cook here and next door, their take on a dish is going to be totally different.
Yep.
Everybody in any cuisine, you take the red sauce or a ragu, and everybody's doing it differently. So uh, just dig in, folks. One of the senior center chefs did it was a seafood soup, and it took a bite and had curry in it. So
Oh,
yeah, I mean, just they're
nice.
going, yeah. Um, and another one was doing a Moroccan dish.
Which
So
is
that,
going to have a lot of the other, a lot of similar spices in it, I'm sure.
right, it was really quite nice to see that and see um, how they're not sticking to just plain food for the seniors, that they're creating exciting dishes. Okay, I don't want to take up much more of your time, but you have these questions coming from me.
I do know the questions are
Yeah,
coming.
questions are coming. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I would tell her to think more about what she wants and less about what she should do. And I'm full disclosure, I don't have children, and I can be that disruptive family friend or auntie who's like, if you need to take a year off before you go to college or something, then do it. And, after college, I remember I didn't go straight into a big career job after college. I went into restaurant. That's when I started bartending and then,
Right,
working in kitchens. And I am always telling my friends' children, my nieces and nephews, like, go travel, go do something. Like, you have no responsibilities right now. You don't have a mortgage or a spouse or a partner or pets or children or, room full of furniture that you need to store. Like, go travel, just experience what sounds interesting to
right,
you. And then you can always get back to, there's always a path back to the job.
right. And that
So
travel might open up another avenue for you that you want to, you know, who really knows out of college really what they want to do? They think they want to do it, but
but they
maybe,
don't know.
right. How many, I can't, and you would agree with this, how many chefs went to college, started as an engineer, started as this, started as that, worked in restaurants while they were going to college and decided they loved that better?
Right. So
Mhm.
many,
So
so many
many.
of them. And it's not to say that they're not using information they picked up during, while pursuing this other career, but it's, yeah, I wish, I wish I had been, I was very kind of worried about what I should be doing at that age. And I think overly so.
Okay. If you wake up tomorrow morning, Chandra, with a new talent, what would it be?
I, um, I struggle with this one because I would love to, I don't know, I can't sing, I can't carry a tune. I'd love to be able to sing happy birthday without, I'm a terrible singer. Um, I, you know, I think that I would love to understand music better than I do. Um,
Okay.
so being able to play or sing or something. I
Do
think that's like an
something.
aspect of life that I wish I was better at.
Okay. Now, I know you have a lot of bits and pieces in your refrigerator, but what are two musts that have to be in your refrigerator?
One of them is definitely I always have preserved lemons in my refrigerator. And I will make them, sometimes it's as rare as like once a year, and I'll do like a big jar. And once those get going, they'll live in the back of the fridge. And then I pull every so often I'll pull some out and make sure I get all the seeds out and then puree them, the whole like the pith and the flesh and everything. And that means that it's so easy to just take a spoonful of that puree and throw it in a soup or mix it up with mayonnaise to make a spread or just add it to whatever I'm cooking. So
Mm.
that's something that I just think preserved lemons are fantastic. I love them. And then you're going to laugh at me because the other thing I consistently always have are fresh lemons. because I do think so often the difference between how something tastes when you make it at home and how it tastes when you're at a restaurant is, there's always it's salt, fat, and acid, like Samin Nosrat always says. And it's so oftentimes just brightening something up with a squeeze of fresh lemon really does help. And then I actually I try to not drink too much tea in the afternoons or in the evenings. So I'll drink hot water with a slice of lemon or a bit of lemon. And if I'm lucky and it's in season, Meyer lemon, because it's fantastic.
Okay. All right. Ultimate culinary fail.
I mean, those happen all the time, all the time. And maybe that's something that I should write about. And you're great about just kind of having like a full view of things. When I was when I was testing recipes for my Indian book, I really wanted to make ras malai, which is one of the only Indian desserts that I absolutely adore. And I was trying to make it in an instant pot and give it more of a texture lighter than traditional ras malai, which is made from like a fresh cheese similar to ricotta that's kind of pressed and then simmered. I was doing it, trying to give it a texture in between that and like a cheesecake. And it took a good 15 different tries to get that recipe right. And but it was really worth it. One of my cousins, my baby cousin, Mike Bowie, lives in New Jersey now, and but she grew up in India, and she messaged me and said that when she first made it, and she said this is perfect, and it just made me feel so good because I knew that she wasn't necessarily going to say that if it wasn't true.
Yeah. What's the best bite you've had all week?
The best bite I have had all week. Let me see. I gotta say, I went to Grundy restaurant in Chicago, Chef Carrie Nahabedian's restaurant, and she had that day gotten in white asparagus from France, from the south of France, and she had prepared it with this, in this gorgeous salad, and it was one of those days, it's we're chatting,
Spring
it's the
day.
end of March.
Yeah.
And it's one of those days where it was like, is it happening? Are we finally getting there to spring? And it was just lovely to have this asparagus and finally start to transition out of root vegetables and brassicas, which I love, but you get to a point where it's like,
I'm
okay,
tired.
I'm tired of them. It's time for
Yeah.
something new. So that was
Yeah.
like this just really wonderful bite.
Chandra, what didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
I That's a tough one because I think that you have touched on so many different, topics, and I feel like you and I could probably chat for another couple of hours. So I don't know. I think you hit everything.
Well, I think what we should do when Stephanie's cookbook comes out, see where you are a year and a half or 2 years from now, because that's how long it takes to do a book.
Mhm.
Um, if I'm still here and doing this, this is episode 279. If I'm still at it, we'll continue the conversation then. I
I love
thank you.
it.
I thank you so much. Great to reconnect, and thank you for agreeing to be on the show. It's been a real pleasure. I thank you, and I just have a couple notes to give, and Jen will take you out. Okay. Let me take this opportunity to wish everyone the best of the upcoming holidays. There will be no show next week. Our next guest will be Kristen Hess, the Artful Gourmet. You can reach me at Instagram on @DaraCooks, or on Facebook. I do have the Food Enthusiast page. Feel free to go back into the show's archived, go back and see the archived shows and the interviews on jmoreliving.com under the food menu, and you'll see the pop down or the drop down, the Food Enthusiast tab. Click on that and you have access to all the shows that we've done. And don't miss signing up for the link for the free bi-monthly food newsletter from Jaymore. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. May your plates always, always be full. See you in 2 weeks.